Finance Minister Nicola Willis says fuel subsidies are off the table for now as the escalating conflict in the Middle East pushes global oil prices higher, raises fears about petrol price spikes here in New Zealand. Of course, price of Brent crude has come down overnight, but the price that we need to pay attention to as Kiwis filling up our Camrys at the pump is out of Singapore. That went up last night. So we'll go to the Finance Minister now. Minister, good morning.
Good morning.
So at what price is too much for your average Kiwi family to afford?
Well, we're very conscious that rising prices at the pump impact families in terms of their cost of living, but also the cost of freight and goods across the economy. So we are watching that fuel price very carefully. For context, the government froze any petrol tax increases when we were elected. That was compared to a plan by the last government to keep hiking those prices. And we're conscious that any move to reduce that tax immediately would have impacts for our road building budget, our road maintenance budget, or it could add considerably to debt. So this is a case where acting in haste could mean repenting at leisure, and we need to watch carefully these developments in the market as they unfold. We're conscious that while the oil price has been spiking, there are options on the table for international parties to take action that could mean that oil price comes back.
You want the G7 to release the reserves?
Well, that's for the G7 to consider. I'm pleased to see their assurance this morning that they do stand ready to act if needed. I think, like New Zealand, they know that their consumers don't want to see spiking oil prices getting in the way of economic growth.
Yes,
and
I am.
So they will be monitoring the developments in the market very closely with an eye to the prices people are paying at the pump.
Minister, have we, because we're a party to the International Energy Agency, I heard you mention yesterday, have we told them that we want them to release the reserves, that we don't want to be pushing up the price of oil here?
Well, as a member of that organisation, all countries have obligations to each other to ensure that if there are fuel security challenges globally, then we can release the stock holdings that we have, and that will be in response to market developments. Right now, just to remind you, fuel companies aren't reporting issues with getting fuel into New Zealand. They do have cover for at least 50 days, and then we have those international tickets or options to get more supply on top of that. So right now we're well positioned, but the reason we've formed a ministerial group to watch this is we're conscious developments are happening very quickly. Even in a 24-hour period, you're seeing significant changes in the price of oil and international developments.
What's coming back to my first question, what price is too much for your average Kiwi family?
Well, we will just keep weighing up where is that price, what impact is it having, and then we will have to consider what would the cost of reducing the petrol tax be. We're very much minded that the impact on New Zealanders when petrol goes up is significant, but we don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction. What you saw under the last government was they said that they'd do a quick reduction for 3 months. It ended up being a year. It ended up blowing out to a cost of $1 billion. That money was borrowed. New Zealand is still repaying that debt now. And I have a responsibility to ensure, yes, we're very much paying attention to the cost of living, but we're also ensuring that New Zealand has a prudent fiscal position. Right now, across the world, the cost of borrowing is increasing, and New Zealand needs to make sure that we're resilient to the storm occurring and that may lie ahead.
You'll remember, though, when it was, from memory, about $3 a litre, when Jacinda cut by 25 cents, people were saying, we literally can't drive to work. I remember a forestry worker in Northern, I literally can't get to work. If people can't go to their jobs, if they don't have petrol to get to work, the economy starts to be affected in that way. So it's not a completely stupid idea. What price is too much for your average Kiwi family to afford?
Well, we are very conscious of that, and that is why, as a government, when we came in, we froze intended petrol tax increases. We said this is not the time to be continuing to increase prices, even though they'd fallen behind inflation, because we recognised the impact that has on Kiwis, and we will continue to judge that very carefully. I'm not going to give you a number today. I'm conscious that we're still experiencing significant volatility, and we will be monitoring it, because on the one hand, of course, we will be very mindful of the impact high petrol prices will have on people. On the other hand, we need to be straight with people that there's no free lunch, that any reduction in fuel excise equals a hole somewhere else in the budget, and New Zealanders understand that this is not a time to be pumping up borrowing, and we do continue to need to maintain our roads and rebuild them after big weather events. We need to make sure we have the funds put aside to achieve that.
Minister, what about the, we've spoken about the price of fuel, what about the GDP and the impact there? We spoke to Kelly Eckhold. This was yesterday before that Brent crude price had come back off its high from yesterday, but it was still very volatile. He was saying that there's a decent chance now that actually the recovery could be put at risk for Q2, maybe into Q3 as well. I saw the numbers you provided, the estimates you gave yesterday. Just how frustrating is that?
Well, look, I shared the preliminary fiscal forecasts yesterday. Ironically, I got them as part of my budget update prior to all of these events in Iran being priced in, and they showed us essentially running ahead of schedule with very healthy growth forecast, balancing the books sooner than might have otherwise been the case, and debt coming in lower. So we start from a positive position, but I'm upfront. International events of this sort will have an impact on potentially inflation, potentially GDP growth, although I'd note that under a number of the scenarios that Treasury have provided me, New Zealand would keep growing just at a slower rate than might otherwise be the case.
Okay. Hey, just finally, I had Chris Hipkins on the show earlier, and we were talking about debt to GDP ratio. He said that your current debt to GDP ratio is higher than that ratio was forecast to be under Labor. Is he right?
Well, what is the case is that we inherited not only a huge debt mountain from the last government, with debt more than having doubled as a proportion of the economy, but also the interest bill on that debt. So in our budgets, we need to make room for more than $9 billion a year to service that debt. And so we've taken a prudent course of saying we need to get that debt curve bending down. That requires making savings now. We've made $43 billion worth of savings so far. Chris Hipkins, at every juncture, when we've put those savings forward, has opposed them. So
but just
it would be higher under Labor.
Right.
And I don't think
hang on.
It's cute for him to claim otherwise, because he still hasn't told us where he'd find the $12.8 billion.
Yes, I know. There's issues going forward.
Scheme.
There's issues going
So
forward,
we've got
but
to compare apples with apples, Ryan, and so I won't have him comparing things to an alternative reality that simply doesn't exist, because Labor have been clear and consistent.
All right.
We'd be spending more, the debt would be higher, the borrowing would be higher.
Appreciate your time this morning, Minister. Thank you. That is Nicola Willis, the Finance Minister. I didn't even ask her about Luxon. Are we interested in that? Yeah. Yeah, he's still there, isn't he? Right, 8:15. All right. Did you got anything to say about your boss? People kind of felt like, some people kind of felt like you weren't all gung-ho, all there for him, and the way that you probably should be. 100% behind him.
I just reject that. That's simply the media mischief making. I'm 100% behind the Prime Minister. So is the National Party caucus. He's doing an excellent job in challenging times. And our team is focused on the New Zealand economy and New Zealanders, not media froth.
Frothing. Absolutely frothing at the mouth we are. Appreciate your time this morning.
They were. You saw them at the airport yesterday, Ryan. If that's not frothing, I don't know what is.
Nicola Willis, the Finance Minister, 16 minutes after 8.